Hello, I'm Jordan and welcome back to The Hidden Cup. Today's video is an update on my esoteric studies and the way I'm starting to struggle a little bit with that process. When I embarked on this journey in earnest 14 or 15 months ago, my initial results were incredible. The readings that I was doing, the cards just seemed to speak to me very clearly. The answers were easy to understand, and the relevance to my question was always very, very obvious. And this persisted really for the first year or so of my readings. It was an incredible experience, very eye-opening, with a lot of results that were frankly uncanny. But I've reached a point in the process more recently, over the past month or so, where I'm starting to have more difficulty with understanding what the cards are telling me. And I think the reason for this is twofold. First, I have been trying to go deeper in my practice. And the cards have responded by speaking to me in a way that requires a little bit more intuition. And that has always been a little bit difficult for me because I do like to have things spelled out clearly. But I recognize that with the tarot, so much of the meaning is in the spaces in between. And if you're limiting yourself to a purely book-based approach to these readings, there is so much that you will miss that the cards are trying to tell you. So I have realized that I do need to embrace a more intuitive approach to my readings, and that involves using a skill set that for me is a little bit underdeveloped. But I do feel like the cards have been helping me. And when I do a pull and lay out the cards and the answer to my question is not initially clear, there's an impulse to be like, well, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I wasn't focused correctly when I was shuffling. Maybe I didn't answer the question clearly enough. So why don't we try it again? But that is not what you're supposed to do in those circumstances. Instead, you're supposed to view this as an opportunity to deepen your understandings of the cards. You can read the book definitions, but it's more important in those moments to really sit with the card itself, to look at it, to see which aspects of the card draw your eye, how it makes you feel, what it reminds you of, if it brings you back to any previous readings, anything like that. So what I have tried to do in those moments where I draw a card or a spread where the meaning or the answer is not immediately clear to me is I will sit with it. I will look up in my favorite books what the official meaning is supposed to be. I will focus on aspects of the card that are drawing my attention, symbols that leap out, anything that really seems to resonate with my spirit, and then you sit, you reflect, you let those things bounce around until something kind of clicks into place. And I have had modest results with this. I say modest because I am generally able to get to a point in each of these readings where I do feel a clear sense of what the cards are trying to tell me. But also modest because it's still a little bit frustrating for me. It's not coming to me as naturally as I would like. But that's why we practice. This is an underdeveloped skill set for me. I have, although I have a natural gift for divination and a degree of latent psychic abilities, they're very underdeveloped for me. It is a muscle I have not put much use into using for pretty much my entire life, with a few noted exceptions that were generally not sustained for a long enough period to really develop into a proper skill set. So I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to keep working with the cards and try to get to where my intuition comes to me more readily. So here's an example of how I have been working with the cards to try to read a bit more intuitively. Over the weekend, I finally received a Book of Thoth Tarot by Aleister Crowley. It's a deck that I've both been interested in and had a bit of trepidation about for some time. I purchased his book about the Book of Thoth Tarot probably 10 or 15 years ago, and skimmed through it a few times as part of my general tarot studies, but mostly it sat on the shelf waiting for me to eventually purchase the deck. Again, had mixed feelings about whether to acquire this deck because of Crowley's reputation, But there's a lot going on there, and frankly, that Aleister Crowley would warrant his own video at some point to really get into the nuances of his public persona and his spiritual identity, and how that intersects with his writing, his deck, and the Thelema system of magic that he developed. At any rate, the deck arrived, and I did an initial shuffle and single card pull, introducing myself, asking the deck what it was going to be to me. And the one card answer to that was the High Priestess, very self-evident, self-explanatory. So I moved on to asking the deck, what is my next step in my journey? And I drew the Ace of Cups. And I sat there with that card for a little bit because I wasn't quite sure what it was trying to tell me. The Ace of Cups is, the foundation of the water principle. It's the introduction to the energy of the Suit of Cups. It's linked with the Holy Grail, with inner light. It has a lot of associations, and it was not immediately clear to me what that card was trying to tell me in that moment. I settled on cultivation of inner light and an awakening of my intuition. As I know, that is something that I have been struggling with and that I know I need to spend time on. And drawing that card in that context from that particular deck, which is infamously good about shadow work and blunt responses, seemed like a clear message to me, or at least clear once I sat with it a little bit, that the cards were telling me that my next step is to develop my intuitive abilities. I still wasn't entirely sure how I felt about that conclusion, but it felt right. So the next day I did readings with another deck, and then yesterday I did another visit to the Book of Thoth Tarot. And this time I asked the cards, what is my biggest obstacle right now? What do I struggle with the most? And I drew the Ace of Cups again. Again, it seemed a little bit unclear, especially in the context of the previous time it appeared over the weekend, what the cards were actually trying to tell me. The Ace of Cups is a very powerful card. It represents, again, inner light, the Holy Grail. And I wasn't sure how it could be perceived as an obstacle. But all of these cards have different meanings and different contexts that they can adapt to depending on where they arrive in the spread and the message that they're trying to communicate. So I sat and reflected on the card again. I did some more reading. And I also consulted the I Ching. And through all of that, what I realized is that I struggle with being yin. I always have to be doing something. Thinking about the things I need to be doing, reading, housework, yard work, hiking. I struggle with allowing myself to simply be. I struggle with resting. I struggle with opening myself up and being receptive to the lessons of the universe instead of proactively putting myself out there as an active change agent myself. So I now view the Ace of Cups as a twofold message, that my next step in my esoteric journey is to become more accustomed to existing in that yin state of passivity, where I am both resting, but also welcoming in anything the universe has to offer for me, whether it be intuitive insights, the wisdom of nature, really anything. There is so much for the universe to offer us. But my path so far has primarily been about developing my internal voice and learning to connect with my higher self and receive lessons from that, and trying to transform myself proactively into the person I want to be. It's been very active-based, a lot of yang energy. But intuition, although there may be aspects of yang in the process, since there's nothing that is purely yin or purely yang, intuition is a fundamentally yin process. It's about receptivity. It's about welcoming in insights from outside of ourselves. It's about allowing the cards to speak to us rather than, pulling a message out of the cards. And I do now feel very strongly that that is what the cards were communicating to me in both the reading over the weekend and in the follow-up query last night. And this is something that to me blows my mind about tarot, because in times when I'm not sure, in times when I have to put a little bit more effort into it, it still finds a way to validate me. So even though it is not giving me right now readings where I lay down a card and immediately go, oh, that's what you're telling me, that's so clear, it's still validating the sessions where I need to expend more intuition. This is the second time in a row that I've pulled the same card twice for overlapping answers to the question. I actually got the High Priestess twice for the initial question of what the deck would be to me. The High Priestess appeared again later that night, and also again from my Handel Tarot that same night. And Handel is a descendant of the Thoth Tarot to a degree, or at least incorporates aspects of that system. So my experience has been that the cards are very good at affirming us when we need them to. And in these areas, I do need a little bit of affirmation. When I'm not getting the sort of instant aha click feeling that has always been so important to me and feeling like I'm learning, when I'm feeling a bit more stress with how difficult it is to find a meaning from the cards in their kindness, with their friendly sense of humor, repeat themselves a little bit with the exact same card in slightly different context to clarify the scope of the answer. And that's amazing to me. I have constantly and consistently had experiences like this with the tarot. And I think it's wonderful that as I'm now moving into a different stage in my practice where I'm having to expend a little bit more energy to go a bit deeper, they're meeting me in the same manner that I'm approaching them. They're being a little bit more obtuse isn't the right word, but they are giving me answers that require a little bit more intuition and discernment, and encouraging me to figure out what they're telling me. And I do feel very strongly that if I keep up practicing with the cards in this manner, eventually the intuition will come more naturally, and I won't have to spend as much time searching for the meaning, reflecting on the meaning, opening myself up and welcoming the meaning. Instead, it will come naturally. So I'm grateful for the cards for helping me in that respect. This is something that I have always struggled with historically in my life. I'm somewhat gifted in a number of areas, and a lot of things come easily to me and naturally to me, and I enjoy that feeling of picking things up and having everything click into place and just feeling like I'm thriving. The first year of my dedicated tarot studies was just, like one light bulb moment after another. But I've reached a stage in my journey where I do need to go a bit deeper, where I need to expend more effort, where I need to be more disciplined in my practice, and where I need to push through those moments of frustration and mild disillusionment in order to get through to the other side where things become clear again. And the cards have been helping me with that, but a lot of the responsibility does fall on me. So I have been reminding myself very, very, very proactively over the past few weeks that this is part of the process, that the difficulties that I'm experiencing right now are growing pains, and a sign that I'm developing parts of myself that I have not used consistently in the past. So I should view the greater difficulty level as a sign that I'm actually advancing. Not that the cards are shutting me out, not that I've somehow gotten on the wrong path or have been wasting my time for the entire year, but that I am instead moving to the next stage of my journey, a stage that will require more effort, more consistent, focused practice, and more patience with myself and more patience with the cards. I've sort of slipped into a goal-oriented mindset with this process where I'm trying to rapidly internalize as much information as possible so that I can move on to the next stage. But that's not what I need to be doing, or at least I've realized that's not what I need to be doing. So right now I am giving myself permission to slow down a little bit with my reading. And I'm trying to focus on only engaging with that part of my studies when I'm genuinely enthusiastic about it. I'm still reading at least one entry on the I Ching per day, so I'm continuing to cultivate and grow. But temporarily, at least, I've taken the pressure off myself to feel like I have to spend an hour or two diving into my studies, an hour or two working with my deck. And instead, I'm going to let myself read a little bit each day and focus on that single card pull where I allow the cards to speak to me in any means that they want, and focus on developing my intuition, learning to be patient, and listen better. It was a good, healthy realization. I was honestly feeling a little bit frustrated and mildly disillusioned with how difficult the cards were starting to feel. But now that I've realized that that is part of the process, and that that difficulty is both growing pains from me utilizing an underdeveloped spiritual muscle, and also my own lack of patience and my need to cultivate more discipline and consistency in my own practice. So there are things I need to work on, but I'm going to continue working on those. And it does seem like validation that I am still on the right path, moving in the right direction, and will be able to find the things that I need. So thank you for watching, and I'll post another one of these videos soon with more updates on my practice. Hope you have a wonderful week.